Welcome to another Quantum Conversation, brought to you by AcousticHealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and I invite you to sit back as we enter the quantum realm, that space of the greater part of you. It is your connection to infinite possibilities, infinite potential, and infinite mastery. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are back with Shamanic Astrologer Erik Roth, and we are talking about this year of 2023 and the amazing astrological events that are taking place. Erik, thank you for being here. Welcome back. It's so good to see you again.
Thank you, Loren. It's really good to be back here, and I'm always excited to be part of this program. And so I'm excited to share what's been happening astrologically with 2023 and going into the future. And happy to also, of course, answer questions during this time as well.
Cool, very cool. Okay, so for those who are on our Zoom audience, you can ask your questions. Questions are going to be more general for our show today, but there are ways that you can have a personal reading with Erik. We're going to put the link in our chat box and on the description box of wherever you're watching or listening to this program. So first, let's start off. Wow. Okay. We are here in April and we can feel the energies having moved through March. And so before we get into the events that are taking place that we can certainly all feel, great shifts, really good reminders to really stay anchored in the heart in all ways, in the face of everything. I think that's a good lesson. And actually, maybe that's what's pushing us forward, is this reminder to stay heart-based in the face of everything. What do you think about that from a giant overview of being called to stay in the heart space?
Yeah, it can be very challenging during this time to stay in that heart space, because we have such an inundation of everything kind of hitting us all at once, everything at once. And to stay, and it's not necessarily staying calm, but staying within our heart, within our space of love, from a perspective of love. The best way to do it is to try to, at times, detach from some of a lot of the reactions that are going on out there, because it's very volatile reactions around the world. And if we can detach from that, because it's not to say that it doesn't have anything to do with us or agree with our philosophical or spiritual desires, but the only thing that we can truly control is things within ourselves. And if we can react more from a perspective of love, it can certainly carry on into other people, spread around the world, our community and our families. But some are just resistant to that. And again, can't force others to change. We have to stay within ourselves to do that. And that can be that could be like a lifelong process to stay in that heart space. And if you can, then you're on the right path.
Well, it is all a big lesson for us as we move through these times, with not giving our power away to react, as you say, to things outside, but to really stay centered. Okay, thank you for that. So here we are. We're going to talk about the planetary alignments and all these astrological events that are going on. But first, shamanic astrology, how does this differ from what many consider traditional astrology, or astrology that you see in the newspaper, those sorts of things?
Yeah, so one of the main principles of shamanic astrology is that it's not a judgmental, meaning that it opens up from a holistic perspective of who we are as human beings and the totality of our life, and without judgment toward whether a planet or sign is good or bad, and that everything has its own light and shadow to it and a purpose behind it. So that differs from the sort of the language of what we call Western or mainstream astrology. Other points is that shamanic astrology draws from the three worlds concept, the underworld, the middle world, and the upper or celestial world, and that all these worlds are interacting within ourselves. But in Western culture, we tend to be very dominated by the middle world, and sometimes, actually, a lot of times, repress those other two realms without realizing that that's what's going on, and so that they can show up in our lives and act out unconsciously in the environment around us without us really even being fully aware of what's really going on. But those worlds play a key role in how helping us navigate. And in addition to that, we can look at the planets as spirit guides, as guides for us to navigate our world, our journey in life. And this type of astrology is very experiential and ceremonial. So we can use it in our lives in personal ceremonies or with groups and community. So they all these different major points are separate or differentiate from regular astrology. But it also brings in the stars too, the actual stars themselves, the constellations and what they mean, along with the signs themselves. So they all play important roles in moving, navigating our journey in life.
Okay, thank you. And so as we have our conversation today, we'll learn more about that and have a deeper understanding of it. All right, so let's get to the juicy part. Tell us about 2023. We are in it. And again, we'll say one more time that we felt significant shifts in March. What happened?
So March was certainly a very signature month particularly for this year, but there aren't too many months where we have such a really powerful planetary shift with particularly outer planets. Pluto moved into Aquarius, as many of us are aware, on the 23rd of March. Saturn itself also switched into another sign in the early part of 2020, March of 2023 here. So let me look at so March 7th was the official date when Saturn moved into Pisces. So whenever an outer planet moves into a new sign, that's a really big deal. That's a shift in on a global humanity level. Like there's a big change. And the longer the planet stays in a sign, particularly the outer planets, and the longer the timeline that is, then the more impact it will have in the long term, rather than just say like Mercury just moving through one sign, and that's usually just a shorter transit, or the moon in 2.5 days. When these outer planets move into that, we can have really powerful impact. And maybe not necessarily on that one day that it happens, but over a period of time, it's starting to change into, like, particularly in Pluto's case, into like a whole new generation coming through over the next 20 plus years. Saturn's case, it's only about anywhere from 2.5 to 3 years. But we also had in March a massive alignment of planets that were going on in Aries, precipitated by Jupiter and Chiron in Aries. And at the end of February, it really started to begin, and we had what we call stellium. And this was a pretty intense energetic expression of these planets. And the focus is primarily on the slower moving one, Chiron. It's been in Aries for about 4 years now, 4 years. And its transit through this sign is all about healing, and healing from our past wounds and all the fractures and the challenges that sign has brought forth into the world, particularly with war and with mission and purpose, and how we might be kind of not quite aligned with who we are. And if we haven't healed parts of ourselves that have to do with our mission and purpose, maybe we've blocked ourselves unconsciously during this period of time. It certainly can highlight that, particularly for humanity. In March 11th, was sort of the center point of that alignment. Now April also had its own alignment, actually just not long ago, with Eris and Jupiter and Vesta going through that area. So we have quite a lot of alignment in Aries, and Aries is, again, all about mission and purpose. It's all about intention and instinct and intuition. But if we just keep going blindly into the future without stepping back and looking at ourselves and uncovering what vulnerabilities we do have in order to really approach life on a more holistic level, where we might be stunting our own growth and not leaving part of ourselves behind if we're not helping, particularly around the heart space and healing that. So March was a very intense month. April certainly has it's like a major carryover to that, and then we're going to get into so even tomorrow is our first Mercury retrograde, and part of the larger window here is that in the beginning of this year we had, and tomorrow will be the first day that it ends, over 90 days of all planets moving direct, and so that is 21st of April. That's when it ends, and then slowly but surely various other planets start to go retrograde over these next several months, and that will start to change things as well. But we've been moving fast, like at a fast forward pace, accelerated pace for months, and now we're in a period where there's going to be not necessarily just a slowdown, but like a roller coaster ride, if you will, over these next several months. It's not without its benefits, though. It's not going to be without its great expansion in our lives, but there are things that are definitely going to be some perhaps some challenges for humanity.
All right. So not to get freaked out about that, but to use it as wisdom and preparation, right?
Yes.
So, all right, you said a lot there, and we're going to go deeper into it. Wow, tomorrow is a Mercury retrograde. And so 90 days where all planets are moving direct. Why is that so important? Is it because it's better for the planetary energy if they're direct? We have more access to that energy. Or if it's in retrograde, can you define that a little bit more for us?
Yeah. So all planets moving direct is essentially just a kind of an energy that connects us to something that, if we're trying to move forward in our lives, if we're trying to get things accomplished and taking steps to have goals and so forth, all planets direct give us a greater opportunity for that, so that we can move forward, we can take action and make decisions and moving forward in our lives in general. Obviously, each of us has our own individual initiations that we're experiencing, but for humanity, it's generally a momentum that is all about forward moving. So it's a pretty rare experience. We're in a window where we're going to have another year next year of of 65 days in 2024 where we're all planets direct, but there are times where we go through several years without that experience here in humanity. So it goes through this oscillation, and there will be a time later this year where they will have most of the planets retrograde. So we have that when we get a lot of planets, or almost all planets, or all planets direct, we're going to have the opposite happen too later in the year or early the following year, depending on the time of year that it happens. So the planets that we're all direct, that I'm pointing out, is Saturn, Pluto, Eris, Jupiter, Chiron, Mars, Venus, Mercury, Neptune, and Uranus. And there were a few asteroids as well that were direct. And so it's like the train is loaded to go, and there's no more stops until we get to Mercury retrograde, and then it starts to make various stops, or maybe have to go backwards a little bit in order to pick up other people, like loop back around and then come back up. Yeah, so that's why all planets direct is important, is getting things together and moving forward with our goals.
All right. And so we are in that, and it starts to end tomorrow.
Yes.
So if folks are behind in this information, can they still activate it and take advantage of it? Or maybe in hindsight, we can look and say, oh, I did have new inspiration. I did begin to do things in a different way. But if we missed the boat on that opportunity, is there anything that can be done?
Yeah, it doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, I just didn't realize until the last day that all planets were direct. So Mercury going retrograde still means most of the planets are direct, and that there will be other years where that will happen too, like in 2024. We'll have it happen again in the relatively early part of next year, for about a 65-day period. So we'll have other opportunities. So even if you miss that period, then there's something else taking place too. And that points to like, oh, what happens with the opposite if when we have a lot of planets going retrograde? Well, that doesn't mean that there's no forward momentum. It just means that there's a lot of going back and putting additional work into what we need to build in our lives, or maybe if there's more research that needs to be done, or more building of relationship with others. It could be a partnership, it could be a business. You can still in a way move forward by going backwards in order to do the deeper work, because we can't just move forward from 0 to 90 or 100 years old without having some steps back to look at our lives and see what we may have missed. So going backwards will help us see and attend to what needs to be attended to of things that we may have perceived that we missed. And so it allows that so retrograde is not a negative thing. It's something that we can take advantage of. It's an opportunity for us. So all planets moving direct is kind of almost like a race on a racetrack. But then eventually there is a point where there's a turn and a loop, and we go back and forth like that. But retrograde's part of that process, and but ultimately we're still in the long term moving forward.
Okay, great. With retrograde of Mercury, many have decided not to get freaked out by it, not to not do certain things, sign contracts or all, but rather to use it, as you said, to go back and revisit things, to do a cleanup, to put more energy in, to refine it. So maybe we can say a retrograde is more of a refinement.
Yes, thank you. I love that. It is absolutely a refinement. I think of the example that Kaylin Castell shared many years ago when I was first learning astrology. And it's like going on a hike, and you're powering through, wanting to get to the top of the hill or the mountain or the ridge, and you pass something that catches your attention, and then you think about it after several steps, and you want to take a closer look at that. So maybe it's a little view off into the valley, and so you walk back and go back to that point to get a better look at what was going on. And as you're doing that, you're also reviewing and passing by and emphasizing that whole area that you passed by first, and then you're stopping and connecting with whatever that is at that point where it stations direct, and then you go back again and go direct over that same territory. So you go over it ultimately 3 times. So there's an emphasis there. So it's not, retrograde is not something, particularly for Mercury retrograde, I don't look at it as something to freak out. Although I do have clients that, it's so ingrained in them that Mercury retrograde is negative or bad that they try to avoid to do anything during that. But in reality, it's a creative process, and you can still make decisions during that time. You can still sign things. but it's more about doing your due diligence and looking more closely at what you're doing and making sure that you're communicating as effectively as possible with the other parties, whether it be your spouse or your partner or a business situation or friend. It's in making sure you do some extra work communication wise to make sure what you're signing or what you're committing to is actually that thing. But there's always going to be, particularly with a reliance on communication, particularly electronic tech, there's always going to be bumps in the road during Mercury retrograde. It's kind of par for the course. So if you go into it with certain expectations that there could be some bumps, and we don't need to freak out on that. That's, again, we can go back into ourselves and control and have introspection about our reactions to whatever's happening. Like the other night, I mean, I'm not even Mercury retrograde, but there was a little bit of a flash of a power outage, and it just lasted, a second, and then the Wi-Fi went out, and it was kind of a weird experience because it was late at night, and like I didn't like the Wi-Fi was having something separate happen with it, and it felt kind of Mercury retrograde-ish. Now Mercury has slowed down considerably in the last few days, so some astrologers look at this as kind of that shadow period, but something like that can take place, and we don't have to react like, throw up our arms and scream as to why this is happening, but to actually, take advantage of that time and go, okay, well, maybe it's a signal we need to take a break. Like last night, I was pretty much getting ready for bed, and then that happened. It was like, okay, I think that's the signal. I need to just stop what I'm doing and prepare for sleep that night. So that's just kind of a way, but it's also a great time for, like, if you want to do some creative work, I mean, artistic work, or decompress from tech and go away for a few days. It doesn't mean you can't fly or you can't sign contracts. Again, just making sure that you are doing your due diligence, and that there could be some bumps in the road when you do this during Mercury retrograde. Like the very first time I launched my website 12 years ago, I had been practicing for a year, and I purposely, intentionally put it on the first day of Mercury retrograde. I launched it on that first day in order to, what we like to call honoring the process, honoring the initiation of what Mercury brings to our lives. And so this Mercury retrograde period is April 21st through May 14th, and it's in the sign of Taurus. So it has to do with the physical, our connections between the mind and the body, and our emphasis on the five senses. And if we're mostly in the head and in our intellect, and we're missing the parts and connecting with our senses and how we communicate in our relationship with the world, Mercury retrograde can help us move into that space more with our physical senses, with the earth, with our loved ones, with our friends. There's that deeper connection there with Mercury. It's like the mind operating through the body at that point. And so it goes back from 15 and a half Taurus to almost 6 to, just under 6 degrees Taurus. And so if you have any planets or any planets in that area of your chart, this is something that will definitely impact your life.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for giving us that additional insight. I was going to ask if we can begin to feel some of these astrological events before they happen, and the answer is yes.
Yes.
As you witnessed yourself too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's just a time to take a breather and not to get freaked out or blame, not really to go into victim saying, oh, this is because of this, but just to have a deeper understanding so that we can steer our consciousness in a way that does make us be more diligent, or double check things, or have more patience or compassion when things kind of go weird. So thank you. You did use this phrase, roller coaster ride. And
Yes.
so the roller coaster ride, how would you describe that? We were going up, or maybe we were with in the most recent months, maybe that was a downward ride, and now we're going to be coming leveling out a little bit more. For the rest of the year, what major events are going to be happening? And here's a question: are there any specific days that are major turning points for the rest of the year? And any preparations we can make so we aren't blindsided?
Yeah, I can give a few. Obviously, it would take there's major things taking place this whole year, but and there was another question just after that. Eclipses are always a big
Here we
time. We just had one late last night.
go.
Depending on your time zone, here in the west coast of the US, it was around 9:15 p.m. The maximum of the eclipse. And on the East Coast, it would have been the early morning of the 20th, 12:15 a.m. That happened right just before the sun moved into Taurus, which it did again shortly after that at the end of the day yesterday. It moved into the sign of Taurus, and this is an eclipse that was meant to be pretty strongly felt, squared Pluto, and to me, that was a much more an eclipse that was meant to be more, do a lot of inner work, introspection, a lot of deeper level, creative, meditation, and it's not a time to make like big plans or to kind of launch yourself out there. If it was just the eclipse without Pluto, I would be more inclined to say that was definitely a very like a rocket ship kind of a experience, but it's not. It's more introverted. Then we have a one coming up on May 5th, which is they call a penumbral eclipse. It means it's like the shadow of Earth's shadow. So it's only brief. It's only like faintly visible, and that's on the mostly on the eastern continents, the Asia, Africa, part of Europe, that'll be visible. And though any eclipses are big days to look at. We also have two more eclipses coming up at in the fall here in the northern hemisphere. October 14th, there's an annular eclipse that happens in the U.S. and I think it goes through into the Gulf of Mexico after it passes through Oregon, very very like almost on top of where I live. And in southern Oregon, and then down and through the mountainous states and down into the Gulf of Mexico. That's a pretty big eclipse that's happening also in, let me see where that exact time, I've got my own information on that here. So that's one that's in Scorpio, at 21 degrees Scorpio, and it will also go into part of Central America, and upper South America. So let me see where that band goes. Yeah, it will pass over the Yucatan, Belize. I mean, a lot of the countries that are between Mexico, not all of them, but a lot of them between Mexico and South America, and then down through Colombia and Brazil as well. So if you're part of that path, you'll get to take advantage of that particular eclipse, and that's an annular. It means there's a ring around the moon, which is so the sun is a little farther away, doesn't cover the whole sun, and so you get this unusual effect of having a ring. That's why it's called annular, because it's annular means a ring essentially. And then also on October 28th, we have a partial lunar eclipse. That's in Taurus as well, actually where Mercury will station direct on May 14th. So that's where the moon will be. And that's all of Asia, Europe, Africa, Australia, and parts of South America as well. So the eclipse seasons are really important. The solar eclipses are more about like a fresh beginning, it's like a super new moon. And the lunar eclipses are kind of highlighting our own shadow. like Earth shadow projected upon the moon, and that it's a time to kind of look at it's definitely a like a deeper level, a moment for ourselves to see ourselves. And the reason it turns a reddish orange brownish color is that it's all those sunsets and sunrises also projected onto the moon. And so it's not all about, I mean, the shadow is a prominent part of that, but it's about also the new beginnings and new endings all wrapped up into one. So it's a major crossroads time, between what we're trying to complete and what we're trying to begin, all wrapped up into one moment there. And again, the solar eclipses are mainly for beginnings, and they all depend on what it's aspecting astrologically. Other dates to look at, and there's upcoming here in June and July, something I did a talk, in-person talk about last weekend here in Oregon, is about Venus and Mars. And they're going to spend a lot of time in Leo, particularly Venus. And so there's this between, what do I have here for that? I'm going to look at my information here. June 3rd and July 24th is really that sort of that centerpiece of that alignment. And that's the Leo energy is like a creatrix type of energy, an embodiment of creativity itself and self-love. And it dances with the masculine and feminine principles coming together and forging something else. The two planets don't actually conjunct fully. Venus it's like this drama and dance between the rhythms of these planets. And to be able to go out there in the early evening sky and see this taking place, Venus all catches up with Mars, but then it starts to station retrograde, which is part of the roller coaster ride. It'll go retrograde on July 22nd, and then back off from Mars. And so Venus will spend 4 months in Leo all the way until early October. But it really is, they connect with the star Regulus. And so there's this really deep, like I look at it as, some people have looked at the Lion constellation and the sign of Leo. There's different definitions, but it's a kind of a Lion's Gate type of situation, certainly with the star Regulus. But it's on a deeper mythological level. There's a connection to the Sphinx in Egypt, and so the great mysteries, the complexity of the mysteries of all of what is existence, is being activated here by both Mars and Venus in this dance. And so there is a potential for on its ideal level, a very strong co-creative, collaborative energy that can come through, where whatever the divisiveness is, the polarity is, this is a chance to kind of collaborate and bring it together on a level that's more, without the divisiveness. But there's also, at the same time, there can be an unincorporated shadow to this that can come in from, like, well, the feminine and the masculine might have their different visions, and so that there's and some people it might react as creating even more divisiveness and polarity. But again, the intent, I feel, is more of a collaboration, a bringing together of this creatrix energy, the embodiment of creativity itself, to help humanity tap into its own self-love and creative radiance, and simply just to be and create without some, a major agenda that needs to happen, but just something that wants to manifest here on this planet. And for those that have some Leo energy and out there that are listening in here and watching, it's a time for you. That's a time you want to definitely recognize. When I do readings, I talk about these things. And, if you happen to have some, like the sun or the moon in Leo, this is definitely going to be impactful for you. And it could be a chance to tap into your own creative center and self-love and experience that more with these planets going through the sign of Leo and then later the Lion constellation, particularly with Mars. And so Venus will be retrograde from, what do I have here? It's July 22nd and for 6 weeks until September 3rd. And it's in Leo the whole time. And that'll be a show to watch, like in June and July, to watch to watch Venus and Mars in the sky. Mercury at some point also joins them. The moon comes through there. It's really, there might be some additional wisdom and transmissions that come from that area of the sky. I think it's a really potent time. Maybe not, I mean, there certainly energetically speaking, it can be a roller coaster ride in this time, but I think creatively speaking, it could be just like a wellspring of co-creative energy coming through.
Okay.
And I mean, there's certainly other dates I can list, but I've covered quite a few already.
Yeah, okay, let's see if I have any questions on that. Well, it really seems like a summer of creativity, masculine and feminine. So we could be aware of the balance that's needed between the masculine and feminine.
Yes.
Mhm.
It will definitely come into sharp contrast, if you will, and the potential for it to actually work together more in harmony. But when you're dealing with the sign of Leo, you're also dealing with ego too, and like self-exploration. So it could be that could feel that there could be some kind of a competition between the two principles of masculine and feminine. And just on a basic baseline level, even men and women in general. So it could create more volatility, but again, the opposite is just as true. And so it's nothing, I don't look at it as something to like worry about. I think it's definitely more of like a potential. If you want to go in it with an open heart, if you want to go in it with a space where you want to feel the love and you want to feel the creative energy, you can control that. You can work with that yourself and take advantage of it fully. There are some that are more closed down from their heart, and they may react in ways that are not healthy, but that's not something that we can control. We've got to control within ourselves. So Leo can be again a wellspring of a lot of creative juice flowing into the world.
Okay, beautiful. And so there's other things going on as well with other planets. So please continue. Tell us more.
Yeah. So in May, just a month from now, Jupiter, which can spend about a year in each sign of the zodiac, will be moving into the sign of Taurus. And this is May 16th. And this is particularly an interesting day because it is on the very next day, May 17th, Jupiter will square 17th and 18th, Jupiter will square Pluto. And that's kind of rare. So Pluto's right on the edge of Aquarius. And I haven't talked so much about that alignment with Pluto and Aquarius because there is a lot. I mean, that's a whole interview all in its own. But this is a prominent point of this Pluto Aquarius transit and with Jupiter and Taurus. So Taurus tends to expand anything that it touches. And Taurus is more about this. Jupiter expands everything it touches, and Taurus itself is a sensual, physical form energy, and it's about pleasures and comforts and savoring our conveniences. Uranus has been in Taurus for several years now, and there will be this year and next year. There's this correspondence between Uranus and Jupiter as well during this time. So there could be that's part of the roller coaster, particularly when we get to the late summer period. After that, a lot of the Leo energy has passed, not everything, but a lot of the Leo energy. But this Pluto, going back to next month here in the topic, Pluto and Jupiter, this is like that middle of May period is definitely can be uh like there could be some additional tension, like stressors in our lives, particularly around the world, and could create an opportunities for certain events to take place. Um, Anything we're dealing with when we're dealing with Taurus and Aquarius, we're really dealing between consciousness, the mind on one side, and the physical form and like particularly the human physical organic form. And so there's going to be some tension between that. And I think it, and I had a also did a talk about Pluto and Aquarius locally here in where I live in Southern Oregon, and we were talking about artificial intelligence and how that has been a huge topic in recent months with this new program that's out there called Chat GPT. And as a human being, I am a little bit uh, let's just say I'm very concerned over that of what it can bring to the public. Now, ideally, an artificial intelligence would be there to support humanity and to support us in being ourselves and having our role and taking care of the Mother Earth and being good stewards. But it can also take us an unpredictable direction. And we've certainly been inundated over decades with film and novels and streaming with what artificial intelligence can actually be capable of. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg of what it can do. And so there is some things that I can certainly get frightened about, but Pluto Aquarius also isn't just about the technology. It's also about, on a spiritual level, a different kind of technology, working with light, working with spirituality and new techniques and more revolutionary idealisms that can be of great support to humanity. So Pluto has helped to kind of dig into the deeper realm of this and help unearth what shadow of technology shows up, but also maybe be more innovative and having more of a type of technology that is more supportive of humanity and not taking us away from ourselves, if you will, and just only up in the mind or in the consciousness, but down here in our bodies, but also on planet Earth as well. Yeah, I mean, transhumanism. I'm seeing the from Linda here, 5959 Linda. That's, yes, there is that movement. There's also people talk about in certain circles about the singularity, where you're merging with. There's two types. You're merging with artificial intelligence and computers consciousness, but there's also the other type that is ascending beyond the flesh and blood and abandoning the body and just becoming pure light. There is that kind of movement to go into that space. But Taurus's input here, particularly with Uranus in Taurus and now Jupiter in Taurus, and even this Mercury retrograde in Taurus over the next 3 weeks, it's also about, hey, we're not here to abandon that. We're here to bridge the mind and the body together. And particularly with our relationship with the earth. It really boils down to a fundamental question. It's like, why are we here as human beings? And one of the potential answers is that we're here to learn what it means to be human, to experience the flesh and blood and the limits of this physical body, not to just jump into the body and then go, okay, I need to leave. It's to actually be present in this form and to be of service to Earth and to humanity itself as well, all wrapped up into one. So that's my own belief that is as part of why we are here as a whole, and each individual plays a role in all that. And Pluto is going to be in Aquarius all the way through 2044. And there'll be some years where it'll be transitioning to to Pisces and going back and forth from Pisces to Aquarius in the 2043 and 2044. So we've got like a whole generation of people, and the people that are going to be born during this time. I mean, imagine what they're going to be able to help manifest for the long-term very long-term potential of humanity, the Pluto and Aquarius generation, and it's just getting going. So Pluto's only in Aquarius for 2.5 months this year. It will be in Aquarius for close to 9 months next year. And then by November of next year, 2024, it'll fully be in Aquarius and will stay in there until 2043, where it starts to transition into Pisces.
Wow.
So we have a lot to uncover with this. And America, me residing in the US, I tend to, see what's going on here in this country. And we're finishing up our Pluto return. That means Pluto has circled the sun one full time already since the Declaration of Independence. So we're in a death rebirth process right now, major transition. And Pluto and Aquarius, this transition going into that space, is part of that emergence into a new kind of energy. And energy sources itself, including spiritual energy, but also physical energy, meaning new technologies coming online, and where some that could be unhealthy, but then others that could be, like clean and vibrant, and where there's more of a idealism behind it, that we can create something that's more in tune with our own evolution. So I'm optimistic with Pluto Aquarius, but I'm also, knowing in reality that there's going to be some challenges for us. It's going to be a very different experience than what we experienced with Pluto in a Capricorn since 2008, and all the way through 2023 here. So we have what happened. One of the other major events, Pluto in Capricorn, was the pandemic, was the further polarization of things, was the structures breaking down and being composted. That's Capricorn energy. That's all hard-edged, kind of in your face type of stuff. But for Aquarius, it's much more celestial. And we're looking at energy sources. We're looking at things that are not quite as tangible as it was when it was in Capricorn. So it's going to be really interesting to see what does transpire, and I'll be keeping my eyes on things and see what developments come from that. But I believe we're going to have more revolutions in energy technology, also spirituality in our own, when it comes to religions, and how that, I think, is going to be very transformational. Like that it's not going to be the same way. Yes, we're in a time where we're in the last stages of extreme polarization. I think that's last stages, meaning the last decade or two. But then we start to move and go beyond that into other forms, and that's part of the turning of the ages in which we live in here.
Wow. Okay. So it's really amazing. A full generation, 20 years with Pluto in Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, can you tell us some of the attributes or the aspects of Pluto that are to be looked at? I mean, what is so important about Pluto? And then you've kind of detailed Aquarius versus Capricorn. Aquarius would be more loving. We all know about the age of Aquarius, that sort of thing. Can you kind of help define more about the importance of Pluto in Aquarius?
Yes. So the main qualities of Pluto itself is it's all about transformation, death, rebirth. That is sort of the key words or key terms of this. It has to do with cleansing, and that's usually done through like detoxification. So if you're doing a gut cleanse, I mean, that's a very Plutonic type of experience. You're surrendering to the need of letting go of all that stuff that's been building up in your gut, and pushing that out, and freeing yourself from the things that built up, maybe sometimes over the years. And then you rebuild, and then you rebirth yourself into maybe you're going to start a whole different kind of a diet that's cleaner and more in line energetically with who you are. then this is the way to do it. And Pluto is kind of that process. It's that push through. And but it can be also very, very intense. So when you're doing that, there are fears that can come through. All that stuff that we have to face. It's all on our gut. And but at the same time, when we're able to release it, when we're able to let go of it and surrender to it, then that's when we can uncover our treasures. On a personal level, and even humanity can uncover its treasures by surrendering and doing our shadow work. That's one of the challenges that the world has is it's in many areas we've been unable as a collective to really fully do our shadow work, to fully acknowledge the various truths that are there that need to be shared, and not just shared and to broadcast, but to actually work with it on a deeply personal level with our own feelings. Maybe it could be with certain traumas. I mean, humanity's had many traumas over the thousands of years, and each individual country, of course, has their own collective traumas too. This is the kind of thing that each individual, we can all do on our own, and we can be better for it. That's where it can free us, liberate us. And Aquarius is about freedom. It's about independence. It's about innovation and doing things differently, and holding ourselves to that in that space. But in order to get to there, we can't just be tied back to this Pluto and Capricorn, which is this, back into our own limits and boundaries that we've placed on ourselves that don't allow us maybe to grow very much. And that's the shadow of that Pluto and Capricorn. So in order to evolve beyond that, we've definitely got to break the manacles. It's kind of like a little bit of Promethean energy in the sense of uncovering our own knowledge that we have to, quote, steal from ourselves, if you will, and steal that torch of the cosmos that everyone has access to, that can download, that can transmit to us, and work with it, because it's there. The knowledge is there. There are particular processes of surrender that help us evolve. And I can probably, if I look on this more closely with the various, let's see. Oh, I wanted to look at the Pluto more. I just want to read off some bullet points, because what happened the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius, that was at just after the start of the Revolutionary War here in the United States, and that was also the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and throughout the Western Hemisphere, in particular, the British colonies here in North America and and mainland Europe. So there were new energies being tested, including steam and coal. And there were also, particularly with Aquarius, revolutionary idealisms coming through. Even the French Revolution was part of the Pluto and Aquarius expression. And then there were revolutionaries and counter-revolutionaries. So whatever the idealisms were coming forward, there was a counter to that from the past that would try to overcome what was the new energy that and then they ended up eventually kind of merging together. But there's also, with any kind of idealism, there can be a shadow to that. If we put on our blinders and are always going through with just our ideals without looking at consequences, because that's in some technologies, nuclear power, for example, atomic power, when that came around, that was technology that was built on trying to end a massive global war. But there was no real moral checks to that, and it just became technology, and we didn't understand it before we started to use it, and now we've got nuclear power all over the place. So that's part of the check for us, is to look at that and go, hey, look at the shadow of our own idealisms and what consequences could that bring forth. And so that's part of the I think the Pluto and Aquarius track that we're here. And then again, the energy sources, I think once they start catching, like for example, fusion power is one that I've got my eye on, which has a potential, again, that has a potential of being an extremely powerful, clean energy that can power the world. But in the wrong hands, it could be something that could be, where like you have people that come into power that control it, and they have hunger and greed, and they start to, again, further try to polarize people or put them into classes and castes, which is sort of anti-Aquarian, if you will. So there will be that sort of that counteracting point there. But in this time, I do want to point out with the thing about Saturn in Pisces is that that's also in the background of what's happening here, and some of the themes throughout this year, all the way until early 2026, until February 13th. It began March 7th, 2023, and goes on till February 13th, 2026. Some of the themes about this is illusions and being able to see through them into our own reality. What dreams that we can try to bring into our reality on a practical level. There's also an emphasis on sustainable healing and the wholeness of our bodies and psyche. So I look at that particular bullet point is something that could be really, really beneficial if we can tap into that more strongly. And then our responsibilities around our own spiritual development, empathy, and being of service to others, and particularly on a practical level. How do we bring that in and be of service more, where it's not so much about the ego or about fulfilling our satisfaction of some convenience, but actually doing the work where there are a lot of needs in the world, and humanity is in a crisis right now, and so Pisces can be very, very helpful in times of crises, because the heart and the spirit are there very, very strongly. And when Saturn gets involved, it's like, okay, we'll step up and show up and do the responsibility, be obligated to what is needed in our communities, in our families, maybe even beyond that, and just for humanity and the earth. So those are the other main points in this transition. So again, 2023 is very, very powerful year in this regard, but we saw all the Pluto and Capricorn time, we saw all those structures needing to be sort of, when I say remodeled, renewed in some fashion: health, education, economic structures, how we live our lives, work. I think that there was definitely some things that are going to stick around for a long time that we need to honor, and if it fits us. And a lot of people started to realize during that time, like, hey, I can't keep doing what I'm doing here. It's time for me to do something different. That was like a lot of people switched paths, and their timeline just it was a major intersection for humanity. Obviously, it's we could have a longer conversation about that, but we're here now, and we could take advantage of this.
Yeah. All right. So looking at the last 20 years from like 2001, 2002 for the last Pluto in Capricorn, right?
That was only started in 2008. So Pluto's starting to slow down, so it's spending longer and longer time in signs. Like, I think it'll be in Pisces for like somewhere 25 to 28 years. It'll be getting longer. For Capricorn, it's about 16. So before that, it was in Sagittarius in the early part of the 2000s.
So this is fascinating, because we can look at the great change in the planet. And you had mentioned the pandemic came on the tail end of that station in Capricorn, Pluto.
Yeah.
And look at how much has changed with so much has changed where do we start? One would be work from home. That is now a commonplace term. It's even in the dictionary, WFH, work from home, which is
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great.
yeah, it's beautiful because it's where now individuals, it's not like the past anymore where you had to show up in front of your boss to be seen, to be validated as an employee, but now
Hmm.
individual employees are given more responsibility to just show up and do the work. Show up and be respectful. Here at New Earth One, we've been doing that. That's been our mission all along. It's like we're not employees, there's no hierarchy, but each individual who comes to share and collaborate does so from a perspective of showing up to do the best that we can do. So that's good. That's a really good perspective. And as you were talking about the counteracts, the counter revolution, for example, the
Mhm.
opposing forces that try to come and say, no, we don't want that. That really tells each light worker, a heart-based person, spiritual teacher, spiritual leader, new earth leader, it really gives
Yes.
gumption to go forward and say, yes, there's things to change on this planet. Like I see more with plastics. There's going to be a time where there's no tolerance for plastics anymore.
I would
We
agree, Lauren.
yeah, we can. I'm getting chills as I talk about this. We cannot go to a beach on this planet that does not have a plastic fork or a bottle cap, plastic bottle cap. And
Yeah.
so that awareness right there, and not to get into global warming where the it's divided on, is it natural? Doesn't matter if it's natural or whatever, if it's man-made. What that's doing is putting in the consciousness of humanity the need to care for our planet,
Yes.
longer treat it poorly, or to dump trash into the ocean, or to have black smoke spewing in the air. And so these are some of the things that I see. Maybe even, we're starting to see a lot with electric cars, electric vehicles, EVs, but then there's also free energy. And you mentioned fusion.
Yeah.
And they have been researching fusion. That's been the magic recipe they've been looking at for decades. And so it would
True.
be beautiful. We're so close to that free energy. But then the opposing forces that we're talking about, maybe that could be the elite that have their tendrils on the control of gasoline and the money. And so that's interesting. Have you put any thoughts on the financial realm? I know some people are like, well, banks are no longer going to be here, or maybe there's no longer going to be borders. Who knows? But these are big things to contemplate.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I there are times when I contemplate it, and like I think like for example, the digital currency movement is something that I think it's going to evolve into something else. Like there is some other thing that it evolves into that is currently not yet known. But I do believe it is already changing the overall global economic structure. But I also think that the whole idea of cash and actual physical money is still going to be around. So that I don't think that that's going to fully disappear, because there is something, again, we go back to the whole Taurus thing, the physicality of and tangibility of things. And that if we've got it only in the digital realm, as revolutionary as that could be, like that's where some idealists and people that want to assert certain controls and have even greater order, extreme order, where we're like, okay, we're going to pay for our things by some kind of implant in ourselves, and or all of that. That's something that I would not ever want to ever do, and I imagine that there are billions of people that don't want to do that either. And so that will, I think, will always be there, and there could be a different kind of basis that sort of holds economies together, where we've got, the way cash is flowing and the way that's all done. There's, I feel like some kind of a new system is wanting to take hold, and more, maybe even more trade-based, economic, because it's kind of right now, it's kind of a niche kind of areas around the world, but I think that is going to become more and more agreeable to humanity with that. So meaning like you're trading services with another for whatever you need and whatever they want. And that was something that was a basis of an economy many thousands of years ago, before money came around, particularly around the Greco-Roman time period. That's when it really started to take hold. I mean, there were other little forms here and there, but not as strongly. And that was also the time when we started having full-time military armies, was during that time. Before that, it was more about calling people up to defend the town, or a king wanting to conquer something. So they build an army and then they disband it later. But that was the time, the Greco-Roman time, Alexander the Great, the Roman Empire, that during that period, that was when it started they started becoming more full-time. So, but currency was part of that. And so it's our chance now to do something different. And but I agree with the fusion power, and I think electric cars are going to, continue to revolutionize things. And even hydrogen power, I feel like, is also another much cleaner source than even electric. And because the materials we have to get out of the earth to build batteries and those kinds of cars can be really hazardous to the earth. And so it's like, well, what kind of batteries are we going to build? Well, something that is less invasive to the earth. And they're continuing to experiment with different materials that are much more recyclable and in greater harmony. And I feel like that's going to help Earth a lot. And plastics, I agree, they're probably not going to be. I think 90% of them will go away in the next 10 to 15 years. I think they'll, at least, or if they don't go fully away, I think we'll be able to recycle them much more effectively than we do right now. Right now, it's just in fits and starts. It really hasn't fully. And as you see, the beaches, I mean, the plastic garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean is growing bigger. But there's new technologies in cleaning up the Pacific Ocean too that are being introduced. Yes. And organizations, nonprofits in particular, that are out there helping to clean. Yes. And it's out there. So just as one thing happens, one might predict like, oh, well, Earth is going to just heat up so much that the planet's going to be unlivable. No, not at all. We'll adapt. We're human beings, and we'll find a way, and we'll not only adapt, but we'll be able to build our cities and communities in ways where it's not going to, melt us, that kind of thing, and we'll be able to take care of our oceans better. I do feel like there is that part of me that feels, well, we'll get to that place, but because of a lot, I think most of the world's population ultimately has a good heart in them.
Yes.
And that's where I feel where I'm placing my trust in. And yeah, I'll just say that. I know we probably are past our time here, but
well, I can share that I'm sensing everybody watching and listening to this is right there with you. Eternal optimists. That's why we're doing this work, that we are anchoring in our heart fully and stepping up into new service roles for New Earth, for our service roles. And so we're going to have you talk about ways that people can have personal sessions with you. I put the link in the chat box, and
yes,
it's in the link wherever you're watching or listening to this video, as well as on the webpage. But one last thing that we can talk about, what are ways, as we close, and before we talk about ways that people can work with you, given this scenario, then empowerment for people moving through these times, taking the leading edge, taking the higher edge, not going into fear or doubt. but really moving with the times in empowerment, what would you advise?
To navigate to gain empowerment in oneself.
Yes, to stay strong, to stay committed, to stay perseverant.
It's in I mean, there's a lot that I can share, but I'll say that, you know, we go through a life thinking, okay, well, when do we get to a point where it's more of a smooth ride? Well, part of that experience is to we can say, oh, I'm taking too many hits from the world, from my family, from my job. Perseverance and stamina is one way, but it's that's just keeping things going. But it's in changing how we react to what's
Mm,
happening, because we're attached. We have expectations about what's going on. And if we're so ingrained in those expectations, sorry, so invested in those expectations, so attached to them, then it's going to create even more stress in our lives. So to empower us is to approach each situation from a place of not knowing the answer, not knowing how it's all going to turn out. I mean, we might have some indication, or maybe even speculate, but not to be attached to whatever that outcome is going to be, but to approach it from a place of like, oh, what will that turn out? What will I have? What will I need to learn from this? Because that other person or those other things, they're also they're also in a place of learning too. So we can empower ourselves with empowering our own freedom to choose what we want, and not locking ourselves into some particular belief structure that that's the only way we need to do it, but opening up to, and that's part of what Aquarius is. It's a turning over of all those limits and boundaries that we've placed in ourselves, and doing away with it, and having a more free spirit to choose what we want, and then ultimately empower ourselves in the world. And particularly around choice, it's like we can and I've had it, everyone has had this, where we can lock ourselves into a certain way, maybe a particular job, or with our family, or with maybe a toxic relationship, and we don't know a way out. Well, there is a way out. We can choose to do something different. And of course, there are thousands of different circumstances, or millions of different circumstances, but we do have the power to choose, and how we react, even when we're not feeling well. Maybe we've got an illness or something. We can choose how we perceive what we're experiencing, and work with whatever tools and resources we have to either try to get better, or to adapt to our situation that can give us some more love in our soul. So that's what I would say to that.
beautiful. Thank you. We are feeling empowered and uplifted and inspired. And thank you. And thank you all for staying the course and for stepping into your gifts here. So if you would like a reading with Erik, I've had a reading and it is quite exquisite. He goes over your personal chart and the planets and stars and everything that affects you, the signs. And there is a special offer link available. Erik, please go ahead and share with us what that's about, because there's a couple of options, and there's some
Yes.
that is just very brief, 30 minutes, there's an hour, there's 90 minutes, and then there's 2 full 90-minute sessions for everyone. These
Yes.
allow you to go really deep and offer incredible support.
Yeah, a 30-minute one would be just kind of getting a taste of things, and maybe just a little check-in with what's going on. An hour is a broader look at things, what's happening, over particularly overview of your natal chart, with a little bit of the timeline, your own astrological transits of what's happening. And the hour and a half is a full reading. I go fully into all the things into your chart and look at all of the different transits that are happening. And then if you get the package, which is 2 readings, 90 minutes, that's where we can, depending on how one wants the second reading, which I recommend at least wait 6 or 8 weeks before you have the second one, unless it's like to really get into something, and you kind of have some knowledge, because I always like to share with people to really integrate that first reading as much as possible. If they're all recorded, you get copies of your astrology chart. You get some supporting materials about shamanic astrology that you can look over and, to integrate to process, because there's a lot that's shared, particularly in a 90-minute reading, that you want to just allow it to sink in. And then after that, then when questions come up, you can reach out to me with another, as you're booking your second reading with me. So that's that's an opportunity for you, and to go deeper with the process of what I bring in with shamanic astrology.
Beautiful. Okay. And there's an option here for a couple or partnership, and you can do that for both people. You just need their birth date. And
Yes.
we invite our viewers and listeners to check out the astrology reading package that's on the link available. Work with Erik. He has got great wisdom and guidance for your personal chart in the stars where you came in on the planet with. And he has great information for you if you choose to so partake in that info. Erik, thank you. Oh my goodness. As we say goodbye, wow, is there anything else you'd like to share about these times?
Just yeah, I mean, certainly I could say buckle up. It's going to be quite a ride, but also I think we all have the power to shift what we want to shift, and we are in a great turning of an age, and so there's going to be still a lot of changes that are bound to occur. So what we're experiencing now is just one moment in time, and give yourself a lot of love and compassion. We need more of that in the world. There just seems to be a greater and greater need for that out there. So encourage you all to connect with that and find that, particularly in your own self, and spread that out with others out there, and approaching it from that way, rather than a place of blame or pointing fingers, or not owning to your being accountable for your own actions, but actually owning up to that, and forgiving yourself if you feel like you've made a mistake or something. You can move forward. This is all about the present moment and moving on to this next phase of humanity.
Well, beautiful. Thank you for the work that you do on the planet, assisting people in this deeper understanding of what's going on and how we're being affected by it, and the paths that we can walk to have ease and grace on the roller coaster ride. Thank you, Erik Roth. This has been another beautiful conversation with you. We're feeling inspired and fresh. Thank you.
Thank you, Loren, and blessings to everyone out there, and my love to you all, and be well.
Thank you. And thank you, beautiful people, beautiful light workers. The love in your heart is the reason why you incarnated on this planet. So keep on going and sharing your love and your light. And if this can help you facilitate your journey, please check out Erik's special offer. Until next time, we will see you again. Thank you. Thank you, Erik. Namaste.
Namaste.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this quantum conversation, and thank you for dancing with us to the cosmic heart. As we raise our own vibration, we raise the vibration of the planet. This show is dedicated to you and all awakening hearts, as we are here to shine our bright light and amplify our love. Access all quantum conversations, special offers from our guests, and online healing retreats by visiting acoustichealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and from my sacred heart to yours, I honor your magnificent love and light. We leave you now with music from the universe. Music literally created by the universe, as musical notes were assigned to mathematical equations. The result is this beautiful music, available at acoustichealth.com. Namaste.